Have you ever wondered what the absolute worst punishments in history were? The French philosopher Michel Foucault began his book, Discipline and Punish, with the chilling tale of a man named Robert Francois Damiens. After a failed attempt to assassinate King Louis XV, Damiens faced a fate worse than you can imagine. He was burned with molten wax and lead. Boiling oil was poured into his wounds, and then he was pulled apart by horses before his torso was burned at the stake. A spectator at the time wrote, "I was several times obliged to turn away my face and to stop my ears as I heard his piercing shrieks." This was a brutal reality of the past. Today, we're delving into the dark side of human history to look at the worst punishments ever devised. Now, this list isn't in any particular order of nastiness, because honestly, they're all barbaric to the extreme. It's hard to say which is the worst. We'll let you be the judge. Some might argue that years of solitary confinement is a worse fate than a few minutes of excruciating pain. But today, we're focusing on the most visceral, barbaric acts. Let's start with one you've probably heard of. The rack. It was a simple, yet terrifying devisa, rectangular frame with levers, pulleys and ropes, used from antiquity through the Middle Ages. Its purpose was to stretch a person's body until their joints popped and muscles tore. Eventually, every joint would be dislocated. It's a classic instrument of torture, for a reason. Next up, a punishment famously used in medieval England for high treason. Hanged, drawn, and quartered. This was a gruesome spectacle. The person would be hanged until they were nearly dead, then taken down, disemboweled, and castrated while still alive. Afterwards, their body would be chopped into pieces, and the head was often displayed publicly as a warning. Thankfully, this brutal practice was abolished in England in 1870. Then there's the Judas chair, also known as the Judas cradle. Imagine a chair with a sharp, pyramid-shaped point on the seat. The victim would be lowered onto this spike by ropes. To make it even more agonizing, weights might be added, or oil applied to make the penetration smoother and deeper. Death could come slowly over hours or even days, either from the impalement itself or from a resulting infection. Some sources link it to the Spanish Inquisition, but its exact origins are debated. Moving on to boiling. In 16th century England, King Henry VIII reportedly made this a form of capital punishment, but it was also used across Europe and Asia. The name says it all. A person was lowered into a large cauldron filled with boiling water, oil, or tar, resulting in a slow and agonizing death. Another horrific device was the Catherine wheel, or the breaking wheel, used primarily in 18th and 19th century Europe. The condemned was tied to a large wooden wheel, and an executioner would use a heavy object, like an iron cudgel, to systematically break their bones. Sometimes death was quick, but other times, victims lingered 4 days before succumbing to their injuries. The writer Voltaire even described this punishment in one of his books. The head crusher is as grim as it sounds. Picture a metal cap strapped to your skull and a plate under your chin, all secured so you can't move. A large screw would be turned, lowering the cap and slowly crushing the bones in your head until your skull imploded. While its exact use is hard to pinpoint, historical texts suggest it was a real device from the Middle Ages. If you've watched Game of Thrones, you'll be familiar with flaying. This punishment involves skinning a person alive. Sometimes, they were burned first to make the skin easier to remove, or perhaps just to add another layer of cruelty. This practice existed as late as the 18th century. It's said the English did it to thieves, and it was used all over the world. There are even accounts of the Chinese Emperor Hongwu ordering the flaying of 5,000 women in the 14th century. Sticking with China, we have death by 1,000 cuts, or linki. This form of execution, common from the 14th century onwards, involves slicing the victim's body repeatedly with a knife. The cuts were small, designed to prolong the agony before death finally came. While it became infamous, some historians suggest it wasn't always as prolonged as legends claim, with some cuts actually being dismemberments that hastened death. Then there's sawing. Looking at 15th century sketches, this method is disturbingly basic. A person would be hung upside down, their legs spread apart. 2 executioners would then take a large saw and cut the person in half, starting from the groin. Because they were upside down, blood would continue flowing to the brain, keeping them conscious for much of the horrifying ordeal. Sawing took many forms across the world, but the outcome was always the same. And finally, something truly nightmarish. Death by rats. This method, reportedly used in medieval Europe and China, takes cruelty to a new level. In some versions, starved rats were placed in a box with a naked prisoner and left to eat them. In others, a rat was trapped under a heated pot on the victim's stomach. As the pot got hotter, the terrified rat would try to escape by clawing and gnawing its way through the person's body. The sheer psychological terror of this method is unimaginable. It's hard to fathom the cruelty people were once capable of inflicting on one another. Thankfully, we've evolved since those dark times. What do you think is the most heinous punishment we discussed? Can you think of one we missed? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content. We'll see you next time.